What's going on YouTube? I apologise for the infrequent uploads. I've been extremely busy behind the scenes working on my next project, which has been announced now. So that new project is Serotonin Studios, the home of minimal deep tech music education. Everything you've come to know and love from this YouTube channel, plus all my experience from one-to-one tuition over the past 18 months, is now being combined into one member site, which is launching end of November. So up until the launch of Serotonin Studio, I'm going to be rolling out a bit of free content, and all of that free content is going to be on Serotonin Studio's new YouTube channel and Instagram page. So I'd massively appreciate if you guys could go and follow the Instagram page and the YouTube channel. It's going to be amazing, and I hope to see so many of you guys from this channel in the members site. So in today's video, I've just clipped out the first half of the first episode of Serotonin Studios podcast. I hope you guys really enjoy this one. It's available to stream on all platforms as well, so if you want to continue watching it or listening to it, you can do so on any of those platforms. Anyways, I'll see you guys soon. Many thanks for watching. Appreciate all the support. Big love. So, welcome to the very first episode of Serotonin Studios podcast. Very exciting times ahead with the launch of Serotonin Studios, which is a music member site focusing on minimal deep tech education with a community aspect built into it as well. So for those that don't know my face, then I am Brendan James. I've been an artist for around about 4 years now. I'm owner of Serotonin Records. I am also an aspiring DJ, and I've been an online music tutor for the minimal deep tech sort of scene and other branching genres for about a year to a year and a half now. So very exciting with the launch of this podcast. Our main focus with this podcast is to give you some industry insights and really just see where it goes and how the feedback is of this content pre-launch to the members site. If it does really well, then it's something that we'll look to expand on after the launch of the members site with a season 2 of the podcast. But for the moment, you can expect about 6 episodes, 1 a week up to the launch of Serotonin Studios, which is the last week in November. And we're going to just be covering different industry topics that I've picked out and that I feel comfortable delving into and talking about. With that being said, as you probably guessed from the title of this video, we are going to just delve in a bit of my background and my journey as an artist and to the point of where I currently am now. Now, granted, I'm not the biggest artist in the world, I'm not the touring DJ by any means, but I get a lot of insights personally when I listen to these sort of podcasts, whether it's inside the music scene or outside the music scene. So that was kind of a reason to sort of kick this one off and really just to get to know me personally, which is really the sort of building blocks of Serotonin and all of its expanding branches as well. So I guess we'll start off at the beginning of my kind of musical journey, my early influences, and really just what got me into house music, which I suppose was sort of my dad and my upbringing from an early age. I was already surrounded by electronic music. I'm only 26, so I guess I was in that era of growing up when iPods were things, and it was going into that digital age. I wasn't born in the digital age of Spotify and Apple Music and all stuff like that, but I've definitely grown through it. And I think along those times as well, there's been a massive rise in electronic music. So I can remember from an early age just listening to stuff like deadmau5 or dubstep collections on my iPod, and even a bit of garage. I can't really remember the type of artists I was listening to, but yeah, I remember having one of those iPod classics and just walking around school constantly listening to music. And I mean, it's funny as well that now music's my career, because I can look back on pivotal kind of life moments and memories and realize, or maybe not realize, but connect them to some kind of music. whether it was a sadder period in my life where I was listening to a Snow Patrol album, or a really highlighted funny moment in my career as a chef with one song on the radio, or a moment where I was grinding through uni and I was listening to loads of liquid drum and bass while studying. I can always relate memories with music, and I feel like a lot of artists probably can relate to that. But going a bit further on the line, getting into more house music, more rave music and stuff like that, I didn't really get into raving and that kind of culture until about late 2019, really. Although I was really into electronic music, it wasn't a bit later on till about maybe 2018, 2019, when I was really getting into just going out, partying, and having a bit too much fun. And that's when really that kind of love and passion for house music just started growing, because I was just out pretty much maybe 2-3 times a month, which maybe doesn't sound like a lot to some of you, but because I live in the southwest, I live in a very, very small city, so the max we had was kind of like one decent house rave a month. If not, we'd have to travel about 2 hours to Bristol. So yeah, there wasn't really much going on. So new city goers were probably thinking amateur 2-3 times a month. But really, that kind of 2018, 2019 era was where that love grew. And that's when I actually started to DJ. And I can actually have everything to thank one of my good friends for this, called Harrison. We always said, especially after our trip to Ibiza in 2019, like how cool it would just be to like DJ. Not even just like being a DJ, like just literally to spin and for the sake of DJing. And he ended up getting a pair of like secondhand decks. And I remember there was a video that went into our group chat of one of my other mates filming him just being an absolute tool, not knowing what to do on these decks. I just thought, fuck, like, this is so cool. And I remember being ridiculously broke at this time because I was just starting uni. I just came back off after a week of Ibiza. So if anyone's been to Ibiza, you know how easy it is to throw away money there. And I literally had £300 in my account and I was waiting for my student loan. And I thought, damn, those DDJ 400s are about £275 at Curry's right now. I just went and bought them. Funny ending to that story. I didn't even get my student loan for another month and a half because I did all my applications wrong because I'm an idiot. But it was worth it because that's where the journey really started, which would have been about September 2019 to give you sort of time points and references to how everything kind of started expanding. So from there, I just started practicing like a madman. I clearly had a bit of a natural gift for it. Like I said, I think music always been a big part of my life and I've always liked different types of music. So I was able to kind of really pick up on things and just have a bit of a natural ear for it. A funny story, I remember a night out with some of my friends, absolutely like away with the fairies. And whatever DJ was on, it wasn't anyone big, was mixing in Michael Bibby's Hanging Trees. I'm literally talking like literally just probably bringing in the fader. And just by the tone of like the kick and the clap and the hi-hat, I was like to my mates, they're playing Hanging Trees. They're like, how the fuck do you know that? Like, shut up. And then before you know it, the vocal came in there. They kind of just looked at me like I was some madman. And I was a madman back then, which we'll probably get onto in a different podcast. But anyways, from there, late 2019, that's when I started an Instagram page. I was just posting mixes, stuff like that. It wasn't under Brendan James. This is really interesting point. It was under a different artist name called Rosia, which is just my surname. And the whole idea and concept was to be like a faceless artist because I was extremely self-confident. Not self-confident, didn't have much confidence, sorry. I was extremely low in self-confidence. That's what I meant to say. So I thought I could be this faceless artist and Obviously, I had no concept of how any of this works at the time, but that just shows the progression to where I am now, and I'm literally looking at a camera, speaking to it like I know you guys, which is mad to think the progression in 3-4 years. But anyways, kept on practicing with my mate as well. We actually sort of duoed up, not as like anything as a paired name. It was always just Rosier, and I think he just used Harrison as his name. But because Harrison was well versed with media, he did a lot of photography and videography. He actually ended up securing our first ever gig, which was in Valentine's 2020. So I have really everything for him to thank, to be honest, because I don't imagine if it was for him, I would have probably ever got around to playing out in front of crowds, just because of the type of person I am, just being extremely introverted, and back then being so low in like self-confidence as well. But anyways, we played to about 10 people. We planned pretty much the whole entire set, track for track, as you do. And yeah, I can remember it vividly. It was a great time, something I'll probably never forget. And yeah, it was like 10 people, mainly all of our just friends, to be honest. Thankfully, we managed to make a really good impression with the promoters. So there's 2 different promoters there. They were obviously all friends, being like a small city. And they kind of promised us loads of gigs and everything like that throughout summer. So we were buzzing. But obviously then, this being early 2020, something happened called coronavirus, which I don't know, some of you probably heard of, some of you probably haven't. And that ruined pretty much any chance of us having any gigs throughout that summer. So because I was furloughed, I didn't have to work, and at the time I was at uni. So the same time I got my first decks in late 2019 was when I started a 3-year degree as well in strength and conditioning, which is sports science for those that haven't heard the term strength and conditioning. So I was furloughed. I literally had nothing to do. All I had to do was turn up to uni, which was like 3 times a week, and obviously it was all on Zoom because everything was locked down. So it was just weird. You'd go on Zoom for like 2 hours and that would be it. So I really just kept on practicing DJ, practicing. And to be honest, it got pretty good. I've released a few different mixes on SoundCloud. They did seem to do very well. But I always felt like something was missing. And like I wanted to progress. And that's where I came on to music production. And yeah, how I kind of got from wanting to progress to music production was all because I was always trying to find ways to stand out as a DJ. Not in the sense a DJ being like, I want to be a DJ. At this time, all I just wanted to do was be a DJ in Plymouth, just play to a few parties and stuff like that. Never once at this point did I ever think it would become what it is today. And because of that kind of mindset of always trying to find ways to stand out, I've done some absolutely ridiculous things. So one of them was buying a RMX, the RMX 1000, which you see fucking Joseph Capriati rinsing like a madman and snare rolls and all of that kind of stuff. I actually bought one of them because I thought, if I learn how to use this, this is going to make me different from everyone else within the local Plymouth scene, and I'll get bookings. Funny story, I still don't get bookings in Plymouth. So clearly that idea never worked. And I also thought of the idea of getting into vinyl DJing, because again, that would make me stand out from Plymouth DJs. And I could rock up to gigs playing vinyl like I'm some sort of superstar old school DJ. Again, absolutely ridiculous. I think I played vinyl out twice and it never went well. So yeah, I've always had that kind of mindset. And from there, that's when it made me realise, okay, there's actually very few Plymouth DJs who produce. I was like, okay, maybe this is something I could go into. My friends always used to say, like, oh, when are you going to start producing? When are you going to start producing? And I always just said, fuck that, looks well difficult. I ain't going to bother. But obviously being COVID, being furloughed, not having to work, not really having to go to uni and do much and just having all the time in the world, I was like, screw it, let's get into production. So of my birthday, which is May 2020, that's when I first got Ableton. Probably the first time, well, that's a bit of exaggeration, but at least one of the very first times I probably fell in love with something. And then it just spiraled from there, which we'll go through. I don't want to jump the whole process, but I just started learning and watching YouTube videos, which I guess leads on to where I've come to currently. And yeah, I just absolutely loved the process of it. And I was just fully invested to a point of where I actually built this studio within about 8 months of me starting producing, I think. Something ridiculous like that. So this is like a spare room within the house. I still live with my parents currently, or my mum, should I say. And it was just a spare room. Like, my mum had some stuff in here, but she didn't really use it. And I think probably about 3 months into the production journey, I was like, can I turn it into a studio? She was like, no, but you can put your stuff in there with all my stuff still in there. So I tried that. It was hilarious. I was like, this is just your room with my production stuff in it. It just doesn't feel like a music studio. Nor did it sound like one. This is a very small room. For those that are watching YouTube, you can see I can touch both walls either side. So it's not a very big room at all. So it sounded like absolute crap without these panels on there. Excuse me, I'm just taking a sip of coffee. I'm trying to do this all in one take and get better at speaking to the camera without editing. Anyways, back to the story. So that didn't work out, moving my stuff into this room with all my mum's kit in it. So I kept on producing in my bedroom. So I have been a bedroom producer, for those that think I've always had a studio, because if you go through my Instagram, I've always been in this room. For another about 3-4 months, my mum just constantly saw me just grinding on uni work. Once I finished that, I'd pull out my MIDI keyboard and then start working on production. I remember one day I was setting up after that transition from uni work to production, and she kind of just poked her head in the room and was like, you can turn that room into a studio. I was like, no way, like, this is awesome. So then I went absolutely nuts. I bought panels, I bought a desk, a big monitor like that one, or something similar, I believe. Yeah, I went absolutely crazy. I even took out a loan. Not many people know this. I took out a £1,500 loan, which literally took me a ridiculous amount of time to pay off because I've only ever worked part-time jobs. So yeah, I really put a lot of skin on the line for this. And it was so funny because still at that time, it wasn't really ever a consideration for this to be a career. It was literally just a hobby. I was putting that much skin on the line. Skin on the line, I mean money, by the way. But anyways, we can kind of fast forward to sort of through 2021 towards the end, because all I was doing was just literally producing uni work, because of COVID, obviously. And then late 2021, that's when I realised I was not getting any traction with my music as such, like no support or anything like that. I never really sent anything out because, like I mentioned, I was very low in confidence. But I did realise, just from being aware more of like the music scene and being a bit more present on social media and watching other artists and what they're doing, I was like, this rosier, faceless account, it's not going to cut it. It's really not going to just do the trick. So that's when I launched Brendan James Music of mid-2021, I believe. So probably going into my 3rd year of uni. So yeah, late 2021. And I knew if I was to do that, it would have to be more of a personal brand. I wanted to add in educational content, a lot more mindset stuff because I was on like this mad like villain arc during lockdown, just meditating like hour a day, reading books like one or two a week. Yeah, I was practically a Buddha who liked house music during lockdown. But anyway, that's when I launched Brendan James Music, which is what most of you guys probably know me for now. Then that rolls into 2022 when things obviously start to open up for everyone. We started able to go out, party a little bit more. Obviously, it was still weird because you had all of these restrictions in place. But thankfully, I still kept in touch with some of those people from my very first gig. Although my friend Harrison decided not to continue DJing through lockdown. So it was more of a solo thing with just me going to these gigs and just really starting to learn to play out in front of crowds. I obviously played some really good gigs and some really, really weird, terrible gigs. Probably one of the ones I remember being, I think it was like a Christmas party, and they were still eating like their Christmas dinners, but then the promoter was like, you're going to have to start playing because of the order of the lineup. And I was literally playing like 120 BPM house music for people eating their Christmas dinners because the venue was like a restaurant and then they turned it into a music venue in the evening. So yeah, very, very strange. I've definitely done my fair share of weird gigs, as you can imagine. But within 2022, obviously I started able to go out. I started connecting with more people within the local scene. And that's where kind of the tutoring really started, believe it or not, which obviously led me on to further down the line, which we'll get onto. So I just started to help local producers. They used to come over here. I just sort of teach them around Ableton, stuff like that. I was always a big fan of sort of helping people, especially being the degree I was doing, strength and conditioning. You're effectively just a fancy personal trainer. What do personal trainers do? They help people grow mentally and physically. So I'm kind of just doing the same, but with my passion project, which was music. Then obviously we kind of roll into late 2022, and this is when I started to get quite good at producing. People were starting to realise it, going, okay, some of these tunes are sick. At the time, I was still rarely sending any of my music out. I think the only two big artists I was sending to, I don't know why I did that in quotation marks, but still, because they are big, Wheat and Jamie Jones. They were like obviously two of my big idols. They probably still are, to be honest. And yeah, they were pretty much the only people I ever sent music to. And a lot of my music would get declined, which it still does to this date. But I did used to get a bit of traction, and Wheats, I believe, that summer downloaded 2 tracks. Never really thought anything of it. I obviously tried hunting for support clips, as you do, but like I said, nothing really much came of it. That's until I came across a SoundCloud mix that Wheats put up from when he played in Amnesia for Paradise. And one of the last tracks he played was one of my tracks. And that was, yeah, a memory I will never forget. I was literally in the gym when I found that out. And then I checked out some of his other mixes, and he did a mix for Soco Loco. And then he played one of my other tracks. And I was like, shit, like this is real. Like I thought I was big time. I thought I made it. Which is hilarious thinking back on it. So yeah, and that's when the tide kind of really turned, and I was like, okay, I can maybe make a career out of this.